Man, Tropical Freeze is so good. It's easily the best game in the entire Country franchise. I love the first 3 Country games, I even like the Donkey Kong Land games on Game Boy, and I think that Country Returns is easily one of the best games on Wii. But Tropical Freeze elevates everything to a level near perfection. The presentation is simply gorgeous, with some of the best graphics, animations, and music I've ever had the pleasure of enjoying in any 2D platformer. The level of challenge is tough, yet fair if you learn to understand the mechanics and timing, and it always has this amazing sense of flow. It plays wonderfully in both single player as well as co-op play. Though, like Returns and other co-op 2D platformers, it does sometimes make the levels a bit more chaotic to manage space within. Nonetheless, it's intensely rewarding. So many collectibles and secret goodies to find, including finding some of the best levels in the game hidden behind secondary level exits. It adds replay value and makes every subsequent playthrough potentially different in terms of the order you might prefer to play the levels. Tropical Freeze has everything going right for it. Dynamic level designs, gameplay mechanics that reinvent how they enhance levels throughout the game, freaking trophies and concept art galleries, and again, the most god-tier soundtrack we've ever had in a DK game. And the entire game franchise has brilliant tracks already. All praise David Wise and the rest of the music team for this one. Okay, so all that being said, what if it's too good? Certainly, it's highly likely that we'll eventually get a sequel to Tropical Freeze at some point, maybe on whatever console follows up the Switch. This is already kind of dating this video pretty bad. But can that sequel ever reach the highs of Tropical Freeze? After all, if those rumors that now span years and years of internet circulation, by the way, are to be believed, the next Donkey Kong is set to be a 3D platformer, more like a sequel to DK64 rather than a sequel to Tropical Freeze. It makes me think of Super Mario World. You know, Super Mario World, that SNES game? Super Mario World, while I still personally prefer Super Mario Bros. 3, sits at the quality pinnacle of Super Mario 2D platforming. And for a while, it didn't really have 2D sequels until New Super Mario Bros. On DS many years later. And let's be honest, as great as the new Super Mario Bros. Games are, they just don't quite hold a candle to the creativity and level of depth found in World. Really, the development energy that went into assuring the high quality of Mario World went into Super Mario 64, and the 2D franchise never really got that same level of priority that went into the 3D games ever since. And while these are completely different historical moments as well as development contexts to compare, I kind of foresee the same thing happening to good old Donkey Kong. Again, totally different context of development between these two franchises, but it does make me think a bit. Like, with such a high bar for Tropical Freeze, what would be the point in trying to outdo it if its sequel will be in such a different format of control and design? What would the developers even do? Introduce a new mechanic that would be central to the game, further removing itself from the core design philosophy of the Country series? You could argue that Returns did this already with the Rocket Barrel levels, but honestly they fit right in with Minecart and Rambi levels. You could argue that Tropical Freeze did this with how the team redesigned how underwater levels controlled. But again, this isn't a necessarily new or dynamic gameplay mechanic that would radically change much about the core appeal of Donkey Kong Country. They could perhaps attempt to make the gameplay feel more like the original 3 Country games on SNES, with less floatiness and more of the screen being taken up by the Kongs themselves. But who knows what that might end up playing like, and if it wouldn't throw off the people who grew up playing the Country Returns and Tropical Freeze. My estimation is that they would still want it to feel like a sequel to Tropical Freeze in some regard. Maybe they add more puzzle mechanics and more grabbable objects that serve distinct purposes in and throughout levels. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here, because honestly I don't know where they go from here. Sure, they could choose another visual theme, enemies that fit that theme, and make a new batch of levels not so dissimilar from Tropical Freeze and call it a day. But then we're just kind of going through the motions again, and in fairness, Tropical Freeze, again, isn't such a bad thing. But knowing Knowing Nintendo, they would want something distinct, like a new gameplay mechanic or novelty that justifies the game's existence. They didn't just make Super Mario 64 2, they made Mario Sunshine with the flood system to change up gameplay. They didn't just make Sunshine 2, they made Mario Galaxy with the gravity system to change up gameplay. They didn't just make Mario Galaxy 2, anyway. You see what point I'm trying to make with this. Where could DK possibly go from here in the realm of the country 2D platforming formula? I'd really love to eat my words on this, but what if, like Super Mario World, this peak of quality might be never met again? And that's not to say the effort won't be put in next time, especially if it's Retro Studios handling it. I could be totally wrong and simply too deep in gush mode over how great and satisfying Tropical Freeze is. The game has set such a precedent that I can't even imagine a different direction for it to take without disrupting what makes it so great. But maybe that's just me. Is Tropical Freeze too good, or am I just overreacting? What do you think? Sound off in the comments on where you think the country franchise could go from here, or whatever thoughts you have on the franchise as a whole. I just want another country game. I can only replay Funky Kong mode so many times.